Hi, and welcome back to Lisa's Stamp Studio. My name is Lisa Curcio. Today I have a card layout for you, and if you're not sure what that is, it's basically a card sketch. It gives you an idea of where the elements can go on your card to make the mapping and layout process a lot easier for you. We're going to be creating one card together, and I have two others to share with you. You'll be able to find the pictures, cutting dimensions, the supplies, and a card sketch with the measurements down in the video description below where there's a link. That will head you over to my blog where everything is located. And if this is your first time visiting my channel, I would love to have you subscribe. Click that subscribe button and make sure you click that bell icon that's next to it so that you'll receive notifications on everything regarding my live events here on YouTube, as well as when I share a new video. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's card. Let's start with that really interesting side cut for this layout. This uses the Golden Garden acetate, and I've cut this 2 by 5 1/4. Keep in mind that your width can be as wide as you'd like. I don't want you to overthink this as well. You can actually create that point anywhere on this area here based upon your liking, and that'll make a little bit more sense as we get started. When you purchase this acetate, it does have a protective film on the back side, so you're going to want to make sure you peel that off before you cut it. In addition to that, did you notice how there's gold on one side and silver on the other, which makes this quite versatile? The package also includes 3 different patterns in the acetate. I have my Stampin' trimmer here, which includes both a scoring and a cutting blade, and I just navigated the scoring blade up and out of the way. I'm going to look and I'm going to navigate to about here. This is about the 2-inch mark here from the bottom. Again, like I said, this can be anywhere you want it. The great thing about the Stampin' trimmer is that this cutting guide area is clear so that you can see where you're going. I'm going to go ahead and open up the arm, and I'm going to pivot this so that the point of the acetate is inside the cutting track. And I'm also going to align the area here where I want it 2 inches up from the bottom. Now, how deep you go in or how wide is, again, up to you. So this looks about good to me. And, no two are going to be exactly alike. So I'm looking to make sure that I'm aligned here, and I'm going to land my blade about here. I prefer to start with my blade at what is going to be the center point of these 2 angles. So I'm going to place this down, and I'm going to close it. My blade is in place, and now I'm going to slice up to the top right corner. That now has left us this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to connect the center here to the bottom right corner. Rotate and position the acetate or the cardstock until you have it exactly where it needs to be. Once you have it aligned, I'd like to navigate that cutting blade to where that cut is going to start. And because it's clear, I'm going to be able to see very well. So I'll start here, and then I'm going to pull to the bottom right corner. And you can see now that that has left us with this angled cut. From that same suite of products, I cut myself a piece of designer series paper measuring 4 by 5 1/4. This is where that layer is going to sit. This is from the Fine Art Designer Series paper package. You'll see, like all the Stampin' Up papers, they are double-sided, giving you lots of options. But because I wanted the acetate to be predominant, I'm going to go ahead and use this side. And I'm actually going to turn it so that the darker area of this more ombre tone is going to be near the bottom. Now, most adhesives are going to show through acetate, so I'm going to be very strategic on where I'm going to place several glue dots. It is not necessary to plaster the entire thing down because we're going to have a focal point here in the center. So I have my glue dots here, and I'm going to peel back one so that it's revealed. And I'm looking for an area here on the acetate where most of the glue dot will be hidden. And you'll see that this is a fairly thick area. So I'm going to press that area here, and I'm going to push, and that's going to lift the glue dot onto the back side. I'm also placing one here on the center because that's where we're going to place our bouquet. And then I'm going to do one other near here, the bottom. And again, I'm looking for an area that's not going to really show. And then we'll tack that in place. I'm going to align this so that it's going to be equal across the top, the side, and the bottom. And if it's easier for you, go ahead and turn the paper horizontally. I know I have success mostly that way as well. And then once you have it all aligned, just give that a press and put it in place. To play up that beautiful gold accent, I decided to cut a piece of gold foil paper, and I'm going to adhere these two together. I love to use my silicone craft sheet because adhesive, liquid glue, and hot glue will not stick to it. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Stampin' Seal Plus, and I'll add adhesive to the back side. Now that we have our adhesive on, I'm going to go ahead and layer that here on the gold foil. Now I only cut that foil about 1/8 of an inch wider than the actual designer series paper. So that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I'm looking to try to make it as even as possible, and then we'll press that in place. That now is going to get adhered here to a piece of 4¼ by 11 of Pool Party cardstock, and that coordinates with the designer series paper. I did score it in half on that same trimmer with the scoring blade right before you joined me, and I'm using my bone folder for that nice crisp edge. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to do the same thing. We're going to flip this over and we're going to add our adhesive. This will have also a very narrow margin all the way around. And then once that looks symmetrical, I'll go ahead and tack that in place. Now let's work on that focal point. I'm using a piece of Whisper White cardstock. And the image that I'm going to be using is a cluster of flowers, and it's from the stamp set called Art Gallery. Really, really beautiful and very abstract and gorgeous with that designer series paper. You can see, because of the abstract images, that allows you a lot of versatility in the image, and I decided I wanted all of my flowers to be a different color. And this is where your Stampin' Right dye-based markers come into play. You do not want to try this technique with alcohol-based markers. It will ruin your stamp, so please keep that in mind. We are going to do what we call direct to stamp. So we're going to place color in all of those areas independently and then place it on the cardstock. But I want to give you a couple tips about this. I like to start with the lightest color first. And in my case, that is going to be So Saffron. Now the markers are dual tipped, and you're going to see a line here underneath the cap. I'm going to use the thicker tip, which is the brush, because that's going to allow us more coverage and allow us to place it faster. The chisel tip really is more for writing, signing, or journaling, so you would not want to use that on your stamps. With the side of the brush, I'm going to go ahead and add color directly to the stamp image. I'm looking to add color in areas that I want it to be predominantly yellow. I'm going to move over then to the next lightest color, which is Petal Pink. And I'm going to turn the stamp to make it easier for my hand. I'm going to place color on this bloom here. And then finally, I'm using Pool Party once again. That's a coordinating color to that designer series paper. Stampin' Up's color coordination is absolutely amazing and one of the most wonderful things about their product line. And then finally, for my stem, I'm going to be using Pear Pizzazz. So I'm going to go over those stem lines. You're going to see how I'm using the edge of my brush, so I'm going to preserve the tip of this marker for when I actually want to color in images. Now, once all the color's been laid down, it's really important that you huff on it with your breath. I like to call that the Darth Vader technique. That's going to re-moisten the ink so that it's going to transfer to the cardstock. Now, this is going to be a very abstract type of look, which is going to work beautifully with the designer series paper and the stamp set's intention. This stamp set has a coordinating set of dies called Floral Gallery. I'm going to go ahead and pull out that piece here, and I'm going to align this. I'm going to pass this through my die cutting machine. Now that we've gone ahead and die cut that, actually die cuts all the negatives very, very beautifully. One last thing we're going to do before we put the card together is create the greeting. This is just a sliver of Whisper White cardstock. Now, if this technique is easier for you to actually stamp the greeting than cut around it, by all means, that's totally fine. I'm going to be using gold embossing powder just to bring continuity to that acetate. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up inside a coffee filter and have that all ready to go. I love to use the coffee filter because it allows me to take any of the excess powder, pinch the coffee filter, and pour it right back inside the bottle. For heat embossing, I'll be using my Versamark ink pad, and I've mounted the words from that same stamp set that say Happy Birthday. Let's go ahead and ink those up in the Versamark ink and stamp them here. One thing about Versamark on white paper is you're not going to really see it till you add the powder, and I always add it generously. And then I'm going to lightly tap off the excess. I'm going to push that powder to the side just to keep the work surface clean. And what we're going to do now is we're going to heat set that. I have my heat tool here, and it has 2 speeds, and I'm going to use speed 2 since it's the hottest so we can set the powder. Now, once I turn the gun on, I know it's going to be a little noisy, so I'm going to kind of walk you through what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold the tip close to the paper. I'm going to protect my fingers because this gets very, very hot. And then once the paper and the powder begins to conduct heat, this powdery finish is going to turn to a beautiful gold foily finish. I have the gun now on speed 2, and like I said, I'm going to work very close to the paper. I prefer to keep the gun moving because I never want to scorch the cardstock. Work in one area at a time to be sure that the powder all turns to the gold. And then I'll rotate this to protect my fingers, and I'm going to do the same thing now on this side. It's very important that you set all the powder because if you don't, it'll simply rub right off with your fingers. My next step was to create banner tips on both sides of the greeting. Now, you certainly can do that with your scissors, but my absolute favorite way is with the tailored tag punch. I'm going to flip it over so that you can see here that it's going to make the perfect banner tip. The reason I love this punch for it is because it's more precise than when I cut by hand, and you can see how narrow or how wide I can do my banner tips. I'm going to take the cardstock and I'm going to navigate it inside the punch. Now I can see the greeting is here, so I'm going to back it up a little bit, and then what I'm doing is I'm lightly squeezing the punch to navigate the point of that punch in the center of the cardstock the best that I can. Now I'm going to flip that over, and I'm going to do that now on the other side. We'll come back here to the card base, and remember that floral image? Let's go ahead and flip that over, and we're going to add some dimensionals to the back side. And these dimensionals fit perfectly in strategic areas so that you can make sure that you've got this balanced. But they are too large for these areas here. This is where I'll bring in my mini dimensionals and my Take Your Pick tool. Now the putty tip on this tool will allow you to pick up small sequins and pieces of paper, as well as interchangeable tips here. And I have the paper piercing tool attachment. It's absolutely my favorite. I'm going to go ahead and pick up those small dimensionals with that tool, and I'm going to place them in various areas here just to make sure that this is well balanced. And then I'll use that same tool now to remove those paper backings. Now that I've placed the dimensionals on the back, I'm going to position this here near the point of this image. Now I have several cards to share with you besides this one, and each of them is a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and tack that in place. And then finally we have our greeting. Now I want to point something out to you. The area here that's going to cross over the stem is only going to connect in the center, which means these other two areas can sag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a glue dot right here in the center because that's very narrow. I've got my greeting and I'm going to press that center right here on my glue dot. And then what I'm going to do is use two more mini dimensionals, one on each of those ends so that this greeting is well balanced. I'm very cognizant of this because I know that I'm going to mail my cards, and I want to make sure by the time they arrive at the other end, they won't be sagging. This now is going to get positioned here. Now my last step is obviously optional, but I absolutely loved these beautiful gold glitter enamel dots. And I think they add a lot of credence to the foil and the acetate. Now you can see they come in various sizes and they already have the glue dots on the back. So I'm going to place my tool up underneath here to help me pick that up. And I'm going to place one here. And I'll take a slightly larger one. I'm going to place that on an angle here. And then finally one other I'm going to place down here. I try to work in a triangle to make it very appealing to the eye. Now as I promised you, I have several other samples to share. This one is created using the Handsomely Suited bundle, which is the stamp set and the coordinating dies. This also comes as a bundle, and when you purchase as a bundle, you will save 10% on both the dies and the coordinating stamp set. You can see that I used that same image to create a very random background, and unlike this one, the designer series paper is very predominant, and I added some simple white baker's twine here. A great masculine birthday card. And then finally, this one is using the stamp set called You Are Amazing. I used the beautiful Artistry Blooms Designer Series paper, bright, bold colors, and a simple greeting from that stamp set to stand out, and then very simple coordinating embellishments. I would love to know which of today's cards is your favorite. Would you leave me a comment below? And it's a great time to shop because right now is Stampin' Up's largest sale of the year called Celebration. For every $50 in product that you spend, you can choose a free product from this exclusive brochure. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you are interested in receiving copies of the current catalogs, you can request them over at lisasstampstudio.com and click on catalogs. If you have enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up here on YouTube, which is a like. It certainly helps. And I look forward to having you join me next time. Have a great day.